Κανάλι 1 90,4 Πειραιάς.
Λοιπόν, εδώ είμαστε για το δεύτερο ημίωρο. Έχουμε στην άλλη άκρη της γραμμής τον Richard Witts, των θρυλικών Passage. Hello, Richard.
Hi.
Hello, welcome to Channel 1. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you.
So, it's great, really. I mean it. You know, I'm a fan first. I told you. So,
I know.
Post-punk poets. Tell us a few words about the new book.
Well, it's entirely an idea of the publisher. I were in London. The managing director is a fan of the band from when he lived in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And he thinks that my lyrics are poetry. He is a poetry publisher. I've never thought of this.
She's right. She's right.
For me, the words are meant to go with music. And they have a function, they have a job, they have work to do in that way. And the idea of putting them on a page is something that never really occurred to me. Anyway, he persuaded me to take, I think, about 40 lyrics. It's not every lyric I've written. I mean, some of them are okay when they're sung, but they don't look very good on the page.
Yeah.
But the ones who look good on the page, those are the ones we chose, about 40 of them.
Mm-hmm. Plato suggests that music had a tremendous power that should be contained, you said once. So tell us about Plato. It's interesting, really.
Well, he believed that, yes, the music had a big social power. And so he actually said that certain modes, that is certain scales of music, should be forbidden because they have too powerful effect. I think it was the I forget which mode it was, the Phrygian mode or something, that should be banned because it made people in the army effeminate. I mean, I don't know what the evidence for this was, but it's a lovely idea, actually. I mean, he wanted these modes, these scales banned, which sounds bad, but actually if music was so powerful that it needed to be banned, then that's terrific actually for composers, because we have a big force of sound. Of course, it isn't true. Music is not that strong. It does affect us, of course. It does have a power, but it's not as strong, it's not as big social power that if you played a Phrygian scale, all the members of the army would turn effeminate. But Plato it's kind of a tribute to music, that it has a power. But I think Plato was perhaps exaggerating the amount of the power that music has, unfortunately.
Tell us a little about live performances with the Passage. Any memories looking back, Richard?
Yes. things synthesizers that wouldn't play. Andy, our guitarist, had I think 3 or 4 different guitars. They were tuned differently. One of them, in fact, just wasn't tuned at all. It was just left whatever state it was in from the last gig, and so he needed somebody to hand him the right guitar. And I think once or twice he got the wrong guitar, which he wouldn't discover till he played it, of course. the one I remember, we were told to play a 40-minute, play for 40 minutes. I think that was in the contract. And beforehand, the owner of the club, this was in America, he came over and he said, I've signed a contract with you guys to play for an hour, for 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And you better play for 60 minutes. I'll be timing your set, and I'll be listening hard to hear if you're repeating anything. So we had to suddenly invent 20 minutes of music. I'm used to improvisation, so you know we can do that. I mean, the Velvet Underground used to do that sort of thing for minutes on end.
All right, so the Passage, Joy Division, Fall, Buzzcocks, Chameleons, a certain ratio. How did you interact with the other Manchester bands at the time? You know.
Well, yes, we never played with a certain ratio, but Joy Division we did. In fact, in the book is
Joy Division at Bristol when Ian Curtis collapsed, huh? I'm right.
That's right. Yes, that was terrifying to see that happen. We had no idea that he was in a bad way, and the members of Joy Division didn't really know how to deal with it. But actually, that we played at Eric's Liverpool, and Joy Division was a support band.
I know,
Peter Hook mentions this in his book about Joy Division. They were our support band, and to make it more embarrassing, a journalist from Melody Maker, one of the weekly national music press, came into the dressing room and interviewed us and didn't interview Joy Division. They were really angry. But I remember sitting in a car with Ian Curtis and Steve talking about cats while we were waiting for a club to open.
Oh, all right.
But the other bands we played with, they were usually members of the Manchester Musicians Collective. Like the Frantic Elevators. Well, the Frantic Elevators became, of all things, Simply Red. So we can say we've played with Simply Red. We all got on very well. Sometimes, one thing that was strange for us was, of course, Joe, our drummer, is left-handed. So his kit is for a left-handed drummer. It's kind of back to front from a kit as you normally see it. So when support said, "Can we borrow your kit?" We used to say, "Yeah, fine, no problem." And to see the horror on the face of the drummer when they sat down and saw everything was back to front. So remember that.
So let me read this one. The Passage, who Joy Division used to open for, who more easily try to join, can be accepted as major even by the cowardly and the cynical. Paul Morley, can't agree more. Your comment.
Paul wrote that, did he?
Yeah.
Oh dear. Oh right. Oh well. Okay, I don't see Paul very often. I know his sister Carol. She's lovely. She's a film director. She did a beautiful film called The Falling, and I'm in her first film, which is called The Alcohol Years. And she's coming to the launch in London, the book launch. I'm looking forward to seeing her, seeing what her new film plans are.
All right.
But yes, well, it's very kind, but we didn't really fit into the Manchester scene. We were a bit unique.
I know. Yeah, it's the truth. All right. Did you really use the Catap technique on your lyrics, Richard? An automatic writing, like Bowie, maybe?
Yes, I tried to. it was an influence from John Cage, the composer, and but it was just too difficult. The annoying thing about it is it's very complicated, and then at the end you don't get a clear instruction. You get something that's a little bit vague, and you think, well, is it worth doing all this for that? But I wanted some way of opening up the vocabulary, the words that I had. And so I started with 3 words, and then the relationship between these 3 words to each other: fear, power, love. And that was more successful. It's like creating, a thesaurus, a kind of dictionary of word associations and things like each other, and opening those out, and that worked. But no, the I Ching, that was just too complicated for me.
Like an unconscious process, in a way.
Yes, it is. Well, it's a way of getting the ego, getting rid of the ego that you have, but finding new things. It's a little bit like in a way doing a crossword puzzle. It brings in a certain discipline of things that you have to remember, the words that you're not familiar with, and so on. So, but your listeners can see the result in the book, whether it works or not.
Is there a chance for a Passage reunion sometime in the future?
Well, the publisher asked me about that because they're doing something in a club in Brixton in a couple of weeks.
All right.
And I like the naivety of this idea that we could just get together and play. It would take months. And there are some things now that we can do. My fear was always forgetting words. When I was singing songs, you had to remember all these words, and I found that quite a challenge. But nowadays, I saw the band Wire recently, and they had all their words on a laptop, and they had it running on the floor in front of the singer. So he just had to look down from the microphone, and he could see what his next words were. So I said, yeah, that's a big improvement. I could work with that. But of course, Andy lives in Spain. He lives in the Isle of Ibiza, and but Joe and I are in the same city at the moment. So maybe something's possible. We're putting a single though. We have a friend, Vic Goddard of
from Subway Sect.
The Subway Sect, and we're putting out someone is putting out a record of his in memory of his wife who died of cancer recently, to raise money for cancer charities. And someone had the nice idea of bands doing versions of Subway Sect songs.
All right.
And I've chosen Parallel Lines as a song to do, and we're working on that at the moment.
All right.
But I have to change the key from Vic's key because it's too low for me.
Okay.
So we're trying to find the right key.
Okay. So, Richard, I had a conversation with Peter Hamill. He's a very good friend, and he's one of my favorite artists ever. So, what do you think about Graaff Generator, Richard?
I think they're extremely interesting, and they were very important. I think that when people write the history of post-punk, they have to bring in bands like Graaff Generator.
Yes.
My argument is that there was a sort of pre-punk that bands like Graaff Generator were associated with, in Manchester, of course. and punk came in as a kind of shock, and it's kind of hid relationships between pre-punk and post-punk. And I think that they were much stronger, and I think Graaff Generator were a very influential band on the sound world of the late 1970s and early 1980s. I met Pete once. He was looking to do he wanted like a castle or a palace or some stately home or something like this to do a theatre work in.
Yeah.
And I spent an afternoon in a car with driving around Berkshire, and I was director of an art centre, looking for a kind of place that he wanted. And we couldn't find it. I don't think he ever found what he was looking for, this big building. So that was a lovely time to spend with him, but a complete waste of time at the same time.
Of course. Any memories from your BBC sessions with Passage, Richard?
Any of the sessions?
Yeah.
Well, they were they were very interesting because it was right at the time when the BBC was moving from analog equipment to digital equipment. And I remember the first time we did a session in London. It was at a converted hotel opposite Broadcasting House, and they just brought in some digital equipment, recording equipment, but nobody knew how to work it. And the producer, a really nice guy, he used to be the drummer in Mott the Hoople. I forget his name. But, someone who really had been on the scene and knew what it's like for a musician to record. And he said, I'm really sorry, we're very embarrassed, but we just don't know how to use this stuff. So they did what they could, and then they did the rest on the old analog equipment. And that session sounds terrific, I have to say.
Yeah, really.
It's on the album. Anyway, so I remember that. Then also we did a session at Maidavale Studio for John Peel, and that was wonderful because next door was the BBC Symphony Orchestra. And so every time I went to the toilet, I would meet members of the orchestra at the wash basin, and I'd say, "Oh, I know you. You're the principal viola, aren't you?" Because I'd seen them on television. At the BBC proms and things like that. Yeah. But it was very nice to see all these famous orchestral musicians every time I went to the toilet.
Great. And closing the interview, Richard, let me read this one to you. Passengers are on the same level as Fall. They just are at the other side of the river where you have to swim to get to. Dimitris Antonopoulos. Yeah, it's from another article of mine. Thank you very much for the music, for the inspiration, for the records, for the new book of yours. Thank you for your time, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you for yours. That's very good of you. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Κανάλι 1 90,4 Πειραιάς.